Hey everybody, welcome, and thanks for joining us today. I am David Dulany with Tenbound on the line today with Mr. Ryan Reisert of the Sales Developers. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today, David. Excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to put this together as I'm kind of going from client to client. I'm sure that you're hearing this as well. There's a tremendous amount of confusion out there, I think, about the phone and how it's used in the sales development world. And, we know that it's a great channel. It's a customized channel. It's an instant channel, and it's something that we definitely still want to keep using. And so, if some folks are trying to figure out how to jump back on and get on there, we've got some actionable tips that we can go through today on the webinar. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited about this. I hear the same thing. The interesting part for us is so many founders, or first-time sales leaders, and ultimately a lot of reps keep saying the same thing. But I hear the phone doesn't work. So, someone told me that doesn't work, so I'm not doing that. And so, I think one thing to take away from this, even if it's not even the phone, is when someone tells you something and you haven't tried it for yourself, don't take their word for it, right? Get out there and try something. So I think that's a big part of what we're seeing as a problem in the market there.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's something that's available to everyone. It's either in your pocket or on your desk, and it's a channel. So if you've heard that it doesn't work, if you're a little hesitant about it, if you're not sure, or you're in a slump, then you came to the right place with the webinar today. Ryan, at Tenbound, we do sales development consulting and training for teams, and then we also run a big conference that's coming up August 30th. You've been helping out with the sales developers in making some calls, talking to some sales development leaders. What do the sales developers do, and how do you help clients?
Yeah, so at the sales developers, we're really focused on our mission being to up-level the profession of sales development, the up-level the perception and profession of sales development. And, as a mission, that seems kind of vague and broad, but how we're doing that today is helping early-stage B2B SaaS companies build their first outbound programs. So we go to organizations who are new to market, or maybe they have some traction and they're looking to double or triple their sales in the next year or two. Before they go out and attempt to do this on their own, or hire some first-time sales reps or proven sales leaders to go to market, we come in and help these organizations install a formula or a process that we've used. Rex and I have used at several companies over the last decade or so to start the outbound program. And then once the process is in place, we enable that with some modern sales technologies. So we're kind of at the forefront of innovation when it comes to the newest and greatest sales stack technologies. We go ahead and integrate those systems for our partners or customers and enable that into our process. And then we'll train whoever's going to be running it so that the companies we work with will have initial program that gives them visibility, transparency, what's working, what's not working. They can find the right people, insert them into this process, and the outcome is an organization that can go to market with, growing revenues without having to, double or triple their headcount. So that's what we're doing here at Sales Developers.
Yeah, and it's been great. I mean, working with you guys on the conference has been awesome because, Tenbound is a small company. I'm doing what I can. We've got 3 or 4 people who are on the team, but, just sending out emails and posting stuff, it wasn't quite doing the job for the conference. And when we started to work with you guys, our sales just exploded. And, we brought in a bunch of sponsors and we're almost sold out on the conference for August 30th. So, I can't thank you enough for stepping in. And a big part of the outbound process that you put in was calling people, jumping on the phone and calling people. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The problem and why we wanted to put this together is you need live conversations. Why are you sending out all these emails? Why are you posting all this stuff on social? Why are you, hitting people on LinkedIn? It's in order to forge a live conversation with somebody who might take an appointment or, might lead to pipeline. And so we know that we need these conversations, but as you can see, the phone is getting cold there. I mean, it's hard. You're not reaching people. You're getting tons of voicemails. People are mean on the phone if you catch them. And, you get into sort of this downward spiral of, hey, I'm just going to rely on digital messaging. I'm going to just send a bunch of emails. I'm going to post stuff on social. And you get to the point where you haven't called anybody for a couple of days, and you're just like, you're trapped in this downward spiral. And, somehow you've broken out of that, Ryan. What are your thoughts? Have you ever gotten in a situation like that and just felt like kind of reluctant to pick up the phone?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think we've all been there. If we're if we're in this profession, there's been a time where we've been reluctant to pick up the phone. It hurts to experience that rejection you're talking about. Maybe outside of work we're having some family issues, or not having a great week, month, quarter, year, and then we go to our job and people are just kicking us in the teeth, telling us to pound sand, get out of here. And it's easier to feel good about doing a bunch of social activities, sending a bunch of emails. You feel really busy, you feel like you're doing things. And when you get on the phone, every time you get on the phone, someone tells you to pound sand, it's like, that hurts. And so you lean back to the other activities because you feel productive. But the reality is, the phone is the most powerful weapon if we care about conversations. And in sales, obviously we care about conversations. We have to earn those conversations in order to have next conversations. And, for early stage professionals, whether you're going to be a sales development rep or an AE or, some other form of account management success, you have to learn how to own the phone. And so it's those times, those reps you get experiencing those rejections that serve a huge learning curve that you need to get over to eventually get better and better and better. And by the way, while it hurts because you're getting this physical rejection, this verbal rejection, the reality is, like, if you just pick it up and get one more call, Jeb Blunt talks about this, right? One more call, one more conversation, that could be the difference between a success and a failure for your day's worth of work. So, finding ways to overcome that feeling of that hurt and getting back on the saddle, if you will, is going to prove long-term sustainable success, right? That's just reality.
I totally agree. And Ryan, I got a note from the audience that they lost audio. If anybody else is experiencing, well, I guess if you lost audio, you're not going to be able to hear us. I've got a note into Bright Talk, and hopefully that'll work out. If you can hear us, maybe just put a little comment there and let me know that you can actually hear us. Maybe it's just that one person's audio went down.
Yeah, is anyone else experiencing issues? Any chats there would be helpful here.
Yeah, we got another one. Okay, so I'm on the line with Bright Talk right now.
Audio is good for someone else.
I can hear. Okay. All right. Cool. Sorry about that. Ryan, thank you. You just made a really good point. I mean, the phone is, in my view, it's the quickest. It's the fastest way to customize. It's the fastest way to improve your tonality. It's the fastest way to get appointments. We, as humans, we get into that herd mentality of wanting acceptance and wanting to feel like we're part of the herd, and because literally, the psychology is, in the old days, if you were outside the herd, you'd probably die. You would get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So, I mean, we have that natural human, feeling of wanting to be accepted. And then you go into work and you talk to 10 people who tell you to go to hell. it's not a great feeling. But so fear has set in, right? And you're kind of stumped. Okay, so we got Bright Talk is looking at the audio right now, you guys. I apologize for any issues. So let's talk about some solutions, Ryan. Okay, we identified the problem. We've got, over a huge number of people on the call that might be dealing with this or have people on their team dealing with this. So let's talk about some solutions. So we got 3 actionable takeaways that you guys can use, coming out of this webinar, and something to definitely think about. So we want you to really think about your schedule, your energy levels, and being open to new ideas. Ryan mentioned, trial and error using the phone, being open to that process. And, let's dive into this, Ryan. So the first thing that I want you guys to think about is owning your schedule. All we have really at the end of the day is the time that we're given, on the earth, right? And so time really is your most precious resource. If you're in your 20s and 30s, you feel like, time, you got tons of time. It's like time isn't even an issue. It's really just, how to be as successful as possible. But as you get a little bit older, you realize, holy crap, time is really all we have, and time is running out. And especially as you're coming into this SDR, it's kind of hard to really take ownership of your calendar and really block out time when, your boss is asking for stuff, your AE is asking for stuff, your family is asking for stuff. Everybody else is trying to own your calendar and get on there. And all of a sudden you realize that the high priority things, the conversations, the time that you spend trying to reach people on the phone isn't on there. And you look at your calendar, you look at a couple of days and you haven't blocked out, 2 solid hours where you're going to make calls and talk to people. All of a sudden 2 or 3 days have passed and your kind of muscle memory on talking to people on the phone has kind of atrophied. And so, if you take away one thing from this, after the webinar, go to your calendar and block out time. And we'll talk about when to do this, but block out time to dedicate to calling people up on the phone. Brian, what do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm going to follow up. I've done a few little videos on LinkedIn about this in the past, about time blocking and the importance of time blocking. Everything you've said, David, is 100% true. And I think even more so than 2 hours a day, you should probably have 3 2-hour blocks every day dedicated to doing your outbound calling. There's 8 hours in a day, and at least if you're an SDR. Now, if you're a full cycle rep, get that 2 hours. But on the sales development side, if your job is to have conversations with the next best customers, you should be spending a lot of your time blocked off, prioritized for doing that cold outbound, and either follow-ups on folks you've talked with in the past to maximize your likelihood of long-term repeatable success. There's a great book out there too, if you guys are really focused on being as productive as possible, called The Productivity Planner. It talks about the Promenado technique. And this is time blocking. Yeah. Pomodoro, there we go, sorry. And it talks about blocking off a time to do a specific type of task. And outside of just the calling itself, you should prioritize the other elements that are going to get you into calling. So one of the things that I find when you owning your schedule and why people really struggle with using the phone is that they're doing all the other things they do, and they're like, okay, now I've got my block for calling. But when they get to their block they're calling, they don't have a real good list to work off of. So they're kind of struggling to find, oh, that person's in the wrong time zone because I blocked off at, the afternoon at 4 p.m. and these are all East Coast and they're already gone, right? So when you actually time block and prioritize your schedule to make calls, you also have to make sure that you're prioritizing your schedule for preparing to make calls, doing the research in one time block, doing the kind of list setup in another time block, and then actually doing the calling. And that's all you're doing. You're not emailing, you're not responding, you're not getting distracted. Put a sign on your back if you're in a pit. Go lock yourself into a call room if you're, at a WeWork or something like that. no distractions, just calling, and you're going to find that this is going to really help. And David, you also mentioned the momentum effect, right? So it's so much easier to overcome those rejections and have success when you're having 3, 4, 5, 6 conversations in a time block. By that 4th or 5th conversation, you're owning it. The fear goes down. We're talking about this, right? The fear level goes down, the confidence goes up, and your success levels, go through the roof.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll just put a point on that. Close out all your tabs, turn your iPhone or your Android off, right? Get rid of everything else. Don't do any emails. Turn off Slack, like whatever you got to do. And if you're out in the pit, as Ryan mentioned, put up a little phone and just be like, dude, this is my money time, man. I mean, this is when I make my money, because this is when I actually talk to people. My old boss, Doug Hall, used to call it the money box. He's like pointed to the phone. He's like, this is your money box. You press the buttons to get the money, and what'll happen is, and this is the challenge on the calendar, like you'll have this blocked out. You'll see it there. You'll be like, okay, today's the day, dude. I'm going to do it. And then somebody will pop in and be like, hey, do you want to go get some coffee? Will you come to this internal meeting to schedule like Janie's birthday party? Or somebody from above you on the totem pole is like, hey, you got to come to this meeting. And that's when you look at it and you go, wait a minute, like my money time, when I make the biggest impact on the company, is from here to here on my calendar. Like let's like organize this. And another thing, like if you find yourself always accepting like the external meetings and accepting anything else that comes in, then you got to like take a step back and be like, okay, I might be dealing here with some call reluctance because I'm going toward these easier things, and I'm not really laser focused on what I should be doing. And believe me, like, I mean, this is so easy. I'm a guy on a webinar describing this. This is something that you have to struggle with any of those things that really make you happy, healthy, disciplined, and stuff like that. And calling is just one of them.
I could not agree more.
So
right?
Ryan,
could not agree more.
I think we beat up the calendar there. And again, this is something that if you take away and you just start blocking stuff out and you defend it like it's for your life, which it really is, you will be much more successful. So energy level. Let's talk about your energy level, because this syncs up with the calendar. And I almost feel like I should have put this slide first, Ryan, and then talk about the calendar, because if you're a morning person and you have all of your energy in the morning and you drink like 4 cups of coffee like me, and you're just like super pumped up in the morning, and you put your time block at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that's not going to work. You're not in sync with when your energy is the highest. You got to have your energy level high, to do something that you might have to kind of break through your fear. So, the easiest thing that you can do is just do like an X and Y axis on a piece of paper and just kind of plot out one day, an average day of when your energy level is the highest and when it starts to crash, like hour by hour. Just kind of plot it out and look at, it's usually kind of a wave pattern on most people. And you kind of get to understand, like, when is that wave pattern at the peak of energy and when does it dip down? And then next to that, put your calendar and put those sacred time blocks on the high energy times as much as you can. Again, you got to be kind of stepping up on this. You're owning your calendar. You're having to tell people, I cannot be disturbed. This is my golden call time. And you block out those high energy times and really get into the habit and discipline of doing it. And then maybe during those low energy time points, that's when you're preparing your list. That's when you're doing your like email responses. That's when you're having internal meetings and stuff like that. But you're owning that based on your energy level.
I think this is a concept that doesn't get brought up a lot, right? A lot of people talk about mindset, and I love that. It gets kind of beat. It could get, you use that term earlier. We beat it up. The mindset piece, like, I got the positive mindset, and that's true. But you also do have to have energy, and it comes through. I mean, put yourself in a situation if you've ever been interrupted with a cold call, and the person on the other line is not very energetic. I don't know who you are, and you sound boring. You're not as likely to move through, with a successful call. And so it's not just about having the energy to get the work done, but it's also the impact it has on the success of your calling, and bringing that energy to the conversation, standing up, right? That increases your energy levels, and making sure that you're, go back to the health stuff too, just eating right, preparing yourself. It's all, a little bit outside of selling specifically, but your diet and exercise and things like that play a big part into this. And if you're not serious about your health and your energy levels outside of work, they're going to slump in work as well. So all these things will impact your ability to have success. And then I think there's one more piece in here when we talk about, it's a little bit off topic, but energy, mindset, I'd layer passion into this as well. Try to bring some sort of passion to these conversations. And if you're working for a company where you're not so passionate about the product, that can be challenging, but you got to find a way to kind of align these hard hours of conversations that are leading to most of them not being successful, most of them telling you maybe something you don't want to hear, to get to the next one. Energy, passion, mindset, it all goes into this level of giving you a ability to be more successful on the phone and hopefully overcome this fear, this call reluctance we're talking about here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are like the reps and sets to get you the skills that you can use for the rest of your career, and maybe you're not super passionate about the product, but if you can align that energy level and, you have a positive mindset as much as possible, you can get through that, and you can learn a ton from doing this. I mean, you talking to people, having quick conversations, being on point with your conversations and your tonality, you can learn a ton. So hopefully you can, if you're not super passionate about the product, you can at least bring passion to the skills that you're learning, and doing this for the few years part-time or as a full-time SDR, and then later as an AE in a part-time capacity. And Ryan, the other quick point I wanted to make here is, if you think about it, you have a finite amount of willpower in the day. And I heard a great thing. There's a guy named Darren Hardy who, if you haven't checked him out, he's an inspirational speaker and used to run Success Magazine. And he categorized it as like a willpower in your battery, the same as the battery in your phone. And I don't know about your phone, but my battery like runs out super quick. And it's kind of like that with willpower. So if you're in a slump and you're trying to get back on the phone, you're trying to get that momentum going, think of your willpower as a battery. And for me, it's like you wake up and your battery's full, and you want to do that toughest, hardest thing right when you have the maximum amount of willpower that's going to get you on the phone so that you can sort of get that momentum up. And, as you go through the day, you notice that, you're much more disciplined, at certain points of the day. And then later in the day, it's like, you go from eating kale salads and grilled chicken to like buffalo wings and drinking huge, pints of beer. They know that happy hour should be around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, because that's when your willpower is starting to dip and you're going to, indulge in those things. So take a look at your own willpower battery, understand when it is, and then time block those times so that you can crush it. So Ryan, I got one more thing that I see a lot, and I don't know if it's just because I'm an old fogey, but and I usually work with SDR teams, but I noticed that there's a lot of folks out there who are like, they're struggling. They're having a hard time especially with the phone and getting people on the phone and disciplining themselves. But they come to the one-on-one and they're like, I got everything figured out. I'm good. Here's what I'm doing. And there's sort of a barrier to being open to new ideas and doing some A/B testing and trying different things and just sort of, trying something new. And so my recommendation is, be open to doing something completely different than what you're doing now, to be able to, get that momentum going. They call it like a beginner's mind. I mean, bring a little bit of humor to it. Like, hey, whatever I'm doing right now, it's not working. I'm not like getting on the phone enough. I'm not connecting with enough people. I don't know what to do. So I'm going to try something completely different and try a bunch of stuff, because right now, I mean, the world is changing so fast. The communications are changing so fast that you gotta try things and have an open mind to coaching and feedback versus, hey, I got this all figured out. Like, you can't really help me. What do you think about that, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, this is so big. You hear about this all the time. Like, you want to make sure you're hiring people that are coachable. I think a lot of people don't know what that means. And I myself have been somebody who says that, I'm open to feedback and willing to accept people's opinions. And early in my career, I know that I was not really listening to what people had to tell me. Like, I listen, I'm hearing you, but I wouldn't really implement it. I kind of stuck to my own guns. And there are times where I really struggled in it, and it wasn't until I started to read a ton and try to do what I'm reading, even if I didn't believe in it, just try it, right? Where I started to turn a corner. And eventually, in my very first company that I worked for, ESC Digital, way back in 2008, I feel like the old fogey now, David. Doing a lot of calls to Fortune 500 brands in the middle of the recession, where quote unquote no one wants to buy. My boss, was telling me I wasn't opening my calls right. I'm like, well, whatever. Like, I'll do my own thing. But he's like, just use the script. Just use the script. Use the script. And I was like, no, I'll do my own thing. I don't want to do a script. Once I turned to using the script and following the process and providing feedback on where I was falling off on the script, all of a sudden I went from having little to no success to like just skyrocketing my success. At a time when no one was buying, I built a multi-million-dollar pipeline, was rapidly promoted, close to $2.5 million in my first year selling. And it was only at that point when I started to turn a corner. And so it's one thing to say you're open to it, but it's one thing to actually do it. And I'll tell you, out of all these ideas that we've talked about today, this is so big. You can coach yourself, but you can also accept and get feedback from others, even if you don't believe in it. You should look and try things, and I think that's really important. And David, you said something here that I think also is something that people will eventually hit a wall. You said if you're struggling, it's not working, you got to be open to feedback. But even if it's working, right? For those top producers they might not be on this webinar because they probably don't feel like they have reluctance. They're the ones we should really be speaking to, right? Guess what? At some point, you're going to hit a wall. At some point, something's not going to work, right? And so you should also be willing to adopt and change and be coachable. Things aren't always going to be the same forever. And so those who are willing to learn, adapt, and keep trying new things are going to be far more successful. So I love that idea of the beginner's mindset, and be willing to just get out there and try things. Who knows? It could be the thing that really turns the corner for you and turns your 100% productivity to 300%. That could be astronomical into your earnings and your career growth.
Totally. And hey, this, like I said, this stuff is not easy. I mean, having a beginner's mind is about pushing your ego down and just being willing to be a beginner and not know what the hell you're doing, and admitting that and taking advice from people that are giving you stuff, trying it, and then giving them feedback and be like, hey, I used that didn't work, but that one thing did, and now I'm doing a lot better. Versus just sort of, I think it's an ego thing. It's like, dude, I know everything. Or it's like an insecurity thing too, because you're like, I don't want to hear any feedback. Like I don't want to hear that, just, I'm going to do what I do and everybody else can go to hell, It's just like, man, I mean, it's fine, dude. If you're, some billionaire guy and that's working for you, great. But if you are struggling, be open to feedback, implement it, and then give feedback to the person who gave it to you. Let them know how it went. Another quick thing I just put on here is we all take ourselves so seriously, and especially when you're doing calling and trying to talk to people. I mean, you just, it's a very awkward environment. So try to have fun with it. I mean, if you can, if you have your call blocks on a high energy point and you got a couple other people in the office, I mean, try to have some fun. Like, we're not curing cancer here or whatever. It's not brain rocket surgery. It's like, we're making calls, we're talking to people, we're trying to get them interested in taking a meeting or having a sales conversation. I mean, have some fun with it, right, Ryan?
Oh, yeah, for sure. You cannot take yourself too seriously. And getting back to the piece about the trying things, I wanted to make another point there on give it a little time too. I think giving it more time than I tried that, it didn't work. Let's go back to the script concept, because this is the thing I'm super passionate about. Got to have a script. You got to know what you should be saying. You should stick to it, because the chances of it not working for one person, whether you use the script or not, are probably equal than if it's going to work, long term. And so while you're getting coached, while you're getting feedback, you've got to also give that time. Give it some time to really try things out. Most people quit way too early, and it's a really big part of it. So that's another point I wanted to make there.
That's great, Ryan. Okay. So, and just to put a point on this, we've got some questions coming in. I wanted to keep this to about 30 minutes so everybody could get back to work or go make some calls. But we'll go over a little bit here. We've got a couple of questions that came in. The last quick thing I want to say, just from a content piece, is it's a quick quote from Socrates, and it basically says, "The truly free individual is free only to the extent of his own self-mastery, while those who will not govern themselves are condemned to find masters to govern over them." And I read that every day, and I'm like, holy crap, dude. I'm the one who has to put this shit on my calendar. Excuse me. I'm the one who has to hold myself to this. I'm the one who has to get my momentum going, because if I don't, somebody else will, right? And that's frightening. Right? So kind of a deep thought there, something to think about. Let's jump into some questions. So Ryan, I got one in here. It says, what are your thoughts on failing small versus just doing more for the sake of doing, i.e. more calls when we aren't making appointments versus taking 100 accounts and targeting them with various messages and channels and timing and see how we do? So often our leadership just thinks more calls, and then measuring from results. Any advice there? That's a really good question. So basically, the old guy, the old folks who are from the telemarketing era are saying, oh, just make, 1,000 calls a day and it'll be good, versus, the people who are like living in the real world of 2018 are saying, no, we actually have to be a little bit smarter than that. You've got an incredible mix at the sales developers, Ryan. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, whoever, I'm not sure who asked this question. I don't see a name attached to it, but it's right from my playbook, which I steal from marketing copy. It's target, message, channel, timing, and look, it is about stick to your swim lane, right? Focus on accounts that you potentially can solve, and this is hopefully done by some research around industry verticals you've sold into. You've got some customer stories you can use. From there, you want to then prioritize within those accounts, those personas that you've sold to in the past and had some success. So who within an organization is the best person to talk to first. I'm going to focus my time and energy on them and then move my way down the ranks, top down. That's just my approach. But the reality is, you know, don't confuse more calls to a big, broad list from more calls to that 100 list, right? More calls. I will still preach that if you're not getting conversations with that list. Don't give up on it. But don't mistake personalization and all this busy work to try to break into those conversations with more calls. So to answer that question specifically is yes, get the right accounts. Yes, get the targets right. That's table stakes. Now, as you're making those calls, make sure your lists are set up in such a way that you're personalizing your introduction, your value proposition, and once you get them on the hook, you're going to have time to break into some of those other talking points that you should be able to own that conversation. So in the modern outbound approach that we kind of put out there is, and we talk about this in our book, Outbound Sales No Fluff, you bucket. And so working should be swim lane, top persona, verified contact information, no conversation. And these individuals are that high velocity calls, but it's that 100 or so you should be doing. When you're doing your priorities, which are people that you've actually spoken to, who you've connected with, who you've got email responses from, that's when you can start to do that more highly targeted, highly personalized follow-up. And that's how I would approach that. You know, there's a time and a place for high volume to the right targets, but there's also time and a place for personalization. But I don't believe you do a bunch of personalization before you've really nailed the channel where they want to engage with you in.
Got it. Okay, so you gotta get your list on point, and once you know that it's the right account, right person, and that you have something of value, then you got to get them on the phone. And what are your thoughts on leaving a voicemail? Because I get a ton of calls every day, and nobody ever leaves a voicemail, and I don't know if it's just a computer calling me or fake IRS thing. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so going back to the buckets, right? I leave voicemails on priorities. People that I know have picked up the phone and use phone as a channel, or perhaps people who have heavily engaged on my emails but haven't responded. I'm going to call and leave them a voicemail and let them know I'm going to follow up with another email, right? Because I know that's their channel, but I'm going to try another one to solicit a potential response, get that response out of them. But I wouldn't be leaving my voicemails on these folks where I just haven't had a level of engagement just yet. So the strategy I deploy is wait till you get some sort of level of engagement. Then you take that extra time to figure out the why them now, and then you can leave a nice personalized voicemail. And in the age of cell phones, where a lot of our calls get forwarded to our phones, especially the iPhones, these voicemails get transcribed. And I'll tell you what, at least for me, I don't get a lot of calls anyway, which is weird because my number's posted on my LinkedIn. But when I do get a voicemail, I get that red indicator, and then I go in my voicemail box, and it's the one channel that's not distracted with 15 million other, my email has 100 missed emails, my, red dots, right? My social might have like 30, Slack has a bunch, and then voicemail, oh, there's one new one. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go check it. If I don't know the name, it's just a random number. I click it, and there's a little transcription. And sometimes I read those, and it's like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. I'll listen, and I might have a call back. So that's my personal approach to it. I think there's power there, but again, prioritizing how you use it, when you use it, is really important because it could be a time waste. Could be. But if you leave it done right, it does get callbacks.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I understand if you're leaving like 100 voicemails a day, it's pretty repetitive, but you're also, practicing your pitch and you're getting your communication down and you're working on it. And I don't know, if somebody doesn't leave a voicemail, I have no idea who it is, and it might just be that spam call. So anyway, so a little bit tactical there. I got one other quick thing. I got a couple of questions, actually. We'll go for a couple more minutes. So storytelling is powerful. Can you tell us a story about someone who did something amazing with the content you discussed today? And I can think of one where the SDR team that I was working with had not been using the phone at all. It was just 100% chat and email. And we had a big trade show coming up. And so we did a call campaign where we basically went through this process. We mapped everybody's energy level. We did sacred call blocks on their calendar. And then we really, tried to build our discipline to do that every day. And they just blew it out. I mean, it was amazing. They were calling people in an industry that do not, traditionally answer the phone. They're not interested. It was driving toward a campaign, and it was a short-term project, but it had a lot of momentum behind it. It had the call blocks, and they did a tremendous job with setting appointments at the trade show and beyond. So yeah, this stuff definitely works. I got time for one more here, Ryan. It says, can you explain what step and how you suggest executing, following up on yes, no, not me, not now? I think that's the response from the people, the person that you're calling. So they either say yes, no, not me, or not now.
Yeah, so this is another thing that I preach, right? If I have a target list of in my swim lane, the persona I'm going after, I will pursue them until I get one of those four. Yeah, let's move forward. No, it's not. It's disqualified. Not me. I'm targeting the wrong person. Hopefully I'm getting a referral, or not now. Well, so the follow-up strategy on this is really associated with the not me and not now, because the no should be disqualified. That's a hard no. And if it's a soft no, then it would kind of flow into not now, right? You're just going to figure out how to re-engage them. Yes, of course, is going into a meeting. So for follow-ups, once you've had that conversation or over email, again, these folks should be people that you can help. They're a top persona. So I've got a connection now. Now it's on me to do my best to explain why them now. And so, some of this has to do with timing, and some of it has to do with your messaging. So if I get a not me, I'm working on that referral. Hopefully you get that referral right away. You're going to request the person who's referring, if you could use their name, have a nice little templated email of referred by, put the person's name who referred you, and then get into sending out a note, making a phone call to that person right away as well. Let them know, hey, I was referred to you by such and such. Leave that voicemail. Emails out. You've got all those touch points there. You're going to list it for looking at signals of intent, and based on where you're getting that, you're going to keep following up until you get that yes, no, not me, not now from the referral. For not now, I always look at who, when I'm in the conversation, why they're saying not no, not now. You want to try to get to the why. Why is this not happening now? Can you explain what will be different between now and that time that you're saying for me to follow up? Get a nice reason for that. It's not a priority. It's not a priority because, if this isn't a top 3 priority, you're probably not going to get anywhere anyway. So if they tell you follow up in a quarter, I always cut that in half. So 90 days should be 45, a month, 2 weeks, a week, probably next, 3 days or so. Because in business terms, if people tell you sometime in the future, I'll tell you what, a week feels like a month in a lot of companies. A month feels like a quarter, and a quarter feels like a year. So make sure you're really following up on those not nows way before they tell you to ensure that nothing slips through the cracks and you're not missing out on opportunities, potentially reviewing and going with a competitor, or worse, deciding to go a whole other direction when you have that initial conversation.
Got it. Thank you, Ryan. Great tips there. And we're right up against our time here. We've got a couple more questions. I'll see if I can answer these over the chat. We just want to thank everybody for taking the time, and I hope that you took away 2 or 3 things that you can use to unfreeze that phone, get it out of the freezer, and get it back into your arsenal of tools so that you can start talking to people and set more appointments. And Ryan, once again, want to thank you for being on the show. We've got these are our Twitter handles. I'm at DKDNSF. Ryan's Ryan Reisert. We're also on LinkedIn if anybody wants to connect over there. Hope to see everybody at the conference coming up August 30th. And Ryan, have a great day. Thanks for sharing all the info.
Yeah, thanks for having me.